Awaken your spirit, chosen ones. When the fire has finished its work, even the ashes refuse to burn again. Congratulations, because whether you realize it or not, you've stepped out of the darkest season of your life, and it will never have permission to touch you again. Studies have shown that the human brain actually rewires itself after deep trauma, meaning you are literally not the same person who once walked into that storm. And that's the key. Storms can revisit landscapes, but they cannot revisit people who no longer exist in the form they once did. What you survived was not just another chapter. It was a furnace designed to end a cycle that had run its course. And the best part? It worked. You're out, you're free. And that particular nightmare doesn't get a sequel. You know those movies that were so bad they never dared to release a part 2? That's your past. No remakes, no reboots, done. Now buckle up, because what's ahead is the unveiling of why it all had to happen and why you'll never be dragged through that level of fire again. This is not just survival, it's graduation. Number 1. The final lesson has already been extracted. The final lesson has already been extracted. That's why it's over. Life doesn't allow pain to keep circling for no reason. It lingers only until it has finished its work in you. Once the lesson is absorbed, the experience loses its grip, because there is nothing left to teach. That's why what you just went through will never come back in the same form again. It served its purpose, and the purpose has been fulfilled. Think of the situations you've wrestled with, the tears you've cried, the prayers you've repeated until they became groans. All of that was the process of pulling something out of you that couldn't be learned in comfort. The betrayal, the silence, the delays, the setbacks, every single one of them was an instructor, and whether you knew it or not, you were a student in a class you never signed up for. You didn't just survive it. You absorbed the wisdom hidden inside it. That extraction is complete, and that's why the suffering doesn't have to repeat. Life is intentional. It doesn't allow the same fire to burn someone twice if the fire has already done its job. And that's what has happened with you. You've grown sharper, wiser, and more discerning. You can smell lies before they're spoken. You can sense danger before it approaches. You can detect manipulation before it wraps itself around you. Those abilities are the lesson, the fruit that was squeezed out of your pain. Since you already carry it, the fire has no business returning. The beauty of this truth is that it shifts your mindset. Instead of fearing, what if it happens again? You can stand in the confidence that it can't, not because you're lucky, but because you're different now. The exact test you faced no longer has a grip on you. You've graduated from it. And once you've graduated, you don't go back to retake the same class. You move forward to apply what you've learned. The final lesson has already been extracted, and that's why it's done. Number 2. Cycles end when purpose is fulfilled. Cycles end when purpose is fulfilled. That's the hidden law behind every season of hardship. You weren't stuck there because life was cruel. You were stuck there because something still needed to be completed within you. The struggle wasn't endless even though it felt like it. It was bound by purpose, and once that purpose reached maturity, the cycle had no reason to keep spinning. That's why you're standing on the other side of it now. Every painful pattern you endured was tied to a lesson, a strengthening, or a revelation. You might not have seen it while you were in the middle of it, but every delay, every heartbreak, every door that refused to open was sharpening you in some way. Life doesn't waste suffering. It bends it, stretches it, and presses it until it extracts exactly what it needs. And once it gets what it came for, the season can't continue. It collapses under its own expiration date. You've already felt how certain experiences repeat themselves until you finally see them clearly. The same type of toxic people, the same betrayals, the same disappointments, they weren't happening by accident. They were cycling because you hadn't yet recognized the pattern or claimed the strength that was hidden inside it. But the moment you finally understood it, the cycle lost its fuel. It ended because the purpose was completed. That's why what once chained you has no hold anymore. You don't need to keep looking over your shoulder, waiting for the same storm to return. It can't. The chapter has already delivered what it was meant to, and now it's closed. And here's the deeper truth. If you ever sense something similar approaching again, you won't be caught in it. You'll walk through it with clarity and authority because you've already lived it and learned it. The purpose has been fulfilled, and that means the cycle is officially over. Number 3. You're no longer a match for your old battles. You're no longer a match for your old battles. The things that once had the power to crush you don't even recognize who you are anymore, because you've outgrown the level they operated on. Struggles always attach themselves to the version of you that can be shaken. But once that version dies, and a stronger one emerges, the old battles lose their grip. They can try to come near, but there's no compatibility anymore. You simply don't fit the fight. Think back to the times when certain situations left you shattered, when words pierced you, when rejection made you question your worth, when closed doors made you spiral into despair. Those moments hit so deeply because you hadn't yet developed the armor you carry now, but with every tear, every disappointment, every lonely night, you were slowly being transformed. You weren't just enduring pain. You were building resilience, wisdom, and strength. That inner construction is why the same battles no longer stand a chance against you. Old triggers that once broke you can't control you anymore. Toxic relationships that once pulled you into cycles can't find the same access point. Disappointments that once felt like the end of the world now only feel like detours. It's not that life has suddenly become easier. It's that you've become stronger. Your battles haven't disappeared. You've simply outgrown them. And here's the truth that makes this powerful. Growth isn't always loud or visible while it's happening. You don't notice your strength until you face something that used to defeat you and realize it no longer has the same effect. That's when you know you've shifted. You're no longer the fragile version of yourself that once matched those struggles. You've been upgraded, and the old battles can't reach the new level. That's why they'll never have the same hold on you again. Number 4. The old door isn't locked. It's non-existent. The old door isn't locked. It's non-existent. This is one of the hardest truths to accept because human nature craves closure. We think if we could just have one more conversation, one more explanation, one more chance to set things straight, then the wound would make sense. But some chapters don't end neatly. They don't come with apologies, reconciliations, or clear answers. They vanish because their time is over. What you thought was left unfinished isn't waiting for you to return. It's gone. You couldn't re-enter even if you tried. That's why you feel the resistance every time you try to revisit the past. The door isn't just shut, it's been dismantled. The people who once played roles in your story no longer fit in the script. The opportunities that slipped through your hands aren't circling back. The places that once felt like home now feel foreign. It's not rejection. It's proof that you've transitioned into a life where that part of your history cannot function anymore. It's dangerous to waste your energy trying to reopen doors that don't exist. You'll end up exhausting yourself chasing ghosts. The reason it feels impossible to go back is because it is impossible. You've changed. The season has shifted, and the structure of your life no longer contains space for what once was. Even if you forced yourself into that old environment, it would no longer fit. You would suffocate in what you once begged for because it doesn't match your growth. The freedom comes when you finally stop rattling a handle that leads to nowhere. You don't need the closure you think you do. The real closure is in realizing the story has already moved on without your permission. That's not tragedy, it's grace. The old door isn't locked, it's non-existent. And the moment you accept that truth, you release yourself to walk fully into the doors that are opening now. Doors that were waiting on you to stop staring at what was never coming back. Number 5. Your suffering was a contract, and it's expired. Your suffering was a contract, and it's expired. You didn't step into those hardships by accident. They were assignments written into your journey long before you understood why. Without realizing it, you agreed to walk through that fire because of what it would draw out of you. You couldn't have gained that depth of strength, that clarity of vision, or that unshakable faith without it. The pain was a teacher, but like every contract, it had terms, and now those terms have been fulfilled. There is no clause for extension, no renewal, no fine print waiting to trap you again. The suffering served as an initiation. It carved out the weaknesses that would have destroyed you later. It stripped away illusions, false attachments, and fragile identities. It demanded a version of you that could endure storms without collapsing. That version has now emerged. Because the contract was never about breaking you, it was about remaking you. Once the transformation was complete, the fire no longer had a reason to remain. This is why the heaviness is lifting, why doors that were sealed shut are suddenly opening, why you feel the strange relief of knowing you don't belong in that old chaos anymore. It's not coincidence, it's completion. You don't have to wonder if the suffering will recycle itself, because the agreement has already ended. Life doesn't repeat contracts that have been fulfilled. The truth is, your suffering owed you something, and it delivered. It owed you wisdom, discernment, resilience, and authority. It owed you an identity that no one could strip away again. And it gave you all of that, even if it came wrapped in fire. Now the season has no power to extend itself, because the purpose has already been achieved. The suffering was a contract, and it's expired. From here on, you're no longer bound by what once held you. You're free to walk into what that contract prepared you for. Number 6. What tried to break you can no longer recognize you. What tried to break you can no longer recognize you. That's the beauty of transformation. It doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you unrecognizable to the very forces that once had you pinned down. The weapons that used to cut deeply can't find their mark anymore because the person who was once vulnerable to them doesn't exist. You've evolved, you've shifted, and the tools that once worked against you are now dull in your presence. The manipulation that once pulled you into circles has lost its hold. The lies that once crushed your confidence now sound empty. The rejection that used to shatter you can't even penetrate your spirit anymore. That's because growth doesn't just toughen the surface, it rewires your entire being. You've become wiser, sharper, and more spiritually fortified. The same tricks bounce off you like arrows hitting stone, because you've outgrown the version of yourself they were designed to harm. It's almost unfair to your enemies because they're still fighting a ghost. They're rehearsing old strategies, pulling out old tactics, trying to reach you where you used to be, but you're not there anymore. You've elevated to a level where their weapons don't even function. It's like trying to unlock a brand new door with a rusted old key. No matter how hard they twist it, it will never work again. The real power in this truth is the freedom it gives you. You don't have to fear a repeat of the same betrayals, the same heartbreaks, or the same cycles, because they can't recognize the version of you that now stands. You've changed form. You've become untouchable to what once tore you apart. The battle isn't over because you fought harder. It's over because you evolved beyond the reach of those weapons. What tried to break you can no longer recognize you, and that's why it can never defeat you again. Number 7. Your spirit has already declared bankruptcy on trauma. Your spirit has already declared bankruptcy on trauma. That means the account where pain once collected its payments is empty, closed, and written off for good. For years you kept paying into it. Your peace, your joy, your confidence, your trust in people. Every blow from life demanded another deposit, and you gave until you thought there was nothing left. But somewhere along the way, your spirit filed its final notice. The debt is settled. The trauma that once drained you no longer has any legal right to withdraw from your life again. Trauma operates like a creditor. It keeps circling, reminding you of what you owe, demanding pieces of you that you don't even have to give anymore. It insists you'll always pay the price of what happened to you. But the moment your spirit declared bankruptcy, that claim was canceled. The balance was erased, not because the trauma never happened, but because it can't continue to tax your soul for eternity. Its rights have been stripped, its authority revoked. That's why triggers that once owned you no longer have the same power. The memories may still exist, but the emotional charge that kept you captive has been discharged. It's why you're able to walk into situations that would have paralyzed you before and feel steady instead of shattered. You don't owe that pain anything anymore, not your sleepless nights, not your tears, not your future. And here's the deeper beauty. Bankruptcy doesn't mean loss for you. It means freedom. In the natural world, bankruptcy wipes away crushing debt so a person can start fresh. Spiritually, it's the same. The very system that demanded your suffering no longer has jurisdiction over your life. What drained you before has no claim, no voice, no access. You are free not because the past didn't happen, but because it can no longer charge you for it. Your spirit has already declared bankruptcy on trauma, and the case is permanently closed. Number 8. You outgrew the cage that once fit. You outgrew the cage that once fit. There was a time when the walls around you seemed unshakable, when the limits imposed by people, circumstances, or even your own fears felt like an exact match for your life. You adapted to small spaces, convincing yourself that confinement was normal. But growth doesn't ask permission. It happens silently, relentlessly, until one day the cage that once defined you can no longer contain who you've become. It's not that the cage disappeared, it's that you've simply grown too large for it now. This is why the old environments feel uncomfortable, why the relationships that once satisfied you now feel draining, why opportunities that once looked golden now seem beneath you. It's not arrogance, it's expansion. You've been stretched by experience, by pain, by revelation, by resilience, and now the dimensions of your life have changed. The cage still exists in the memory of others, but for you, it's useless. It doesn't fit. People who once controlled you don't understand why their words bounce off you now. Systems that once dictated your choices can't hold you anymore. Even your own past doubts can't trap you in the same way because your mindset has grown beyond them. The boundaries that used to fit so neatly around your life now feel laughably small. You didn't break the cage. It lost its grip because you became too expansive for it. And here's the most powerful part. Once you've outgrown a cage, you can never shrink back to fit inside it again. You might revisit the memory, but you can't reoccupy the space. Your soul has stretched, and stretching is irreversible. That's why certain doors won't open no matter how hard you knock, and why certain people no longer feel aligned. It's not rejection, it's confirmation. You've grown. What once held you perfectly now has no hold at all, because you outgrew the cage that once fit. Number 9. The battle was never against them. It was against time. The battle was never against them. It was against time. All the faces, the attacks, the betrayals, the disappointments, they were only instruments. The real opponent was the clock. You weren't just being tested in strength, you were being tested in endurance. Could you withstand the wait long enough for the season to run its course? Could you hold your ground while the storm raged, even when nothing seemed to shift? That was the fight all along. To outlast a season that was designed to feel endless. Time was the weapon used against you, not just circumstances. Prolonged silence, delayed answers, opportunities withheld, people rising against you over and over. It wasn't that the season was unbeatable. It was that it was stretched out to make you believe it would never end. That was the trap, to exhaust your hope before the finish line. But you made it. You endured when it would have been easier to quit. You stayed standing when everything screamed for you to collapse. And because of that, time has finally folded. The expiration date has now passed. This is why you feel the atmosphere shifting. Not because the people changed, but because the season closed. What once pressed you with unbearable force has suddenly lost its power, not through your striving, but through timing. There are battles that can't be won by swinging harder. They can only be won by surviving longer. That's what you did. You outlasted. The enemy never truly had control. Time was the test. But the clock doesn't tick against you forever. Every season has a built-in limit, and you've now reached the end of that one. The battle wasn't about destroying you. It was about stretching you to prove you couldn't be broken. And now, because you endured, the fight is over. The season expired, the weight lifted, the time has passed. Number 10. The wilderness was not punishment, it was proof. The wilderness was not punishment, it was proof. You weren't thrown into isolation because you were forgotten or because life was against you. You were placed there to prove what you were made of. Stripped of applause, stripped of validation, stripped of the comfort of having people to lean on, you were left with nothing but yourself and God. That wasn't cruelty, it was strategy. Because before destiny could open, there had to be undeniable evidence that you could survive without a crowd, without recognition, without the safety net of constant reassurance. That proof was the requirement for your release. In the wilderness, the voices went quiet. The people who claimed they would stand by you disappeared. Opportunities that looked certain collapsed. And in that emptiness, you discovered something greater. You discovered that you are enough, even when no one else says so. You learned how to walk without clapping hands behind you, how to stand without a cheering section, how to keep moving even when no one saw or acknowledged the effort. That resilience became your proof. The wilderness tested your motives. Were you only willing to move forward if people praised you? Were you only going to keep going if someone validated your worth? Or could you press on when there was nothing but silence? You proved that you could. You proved that your faith wasn't built on applause, your strength wasn't dependent on validation, and your identity wasn't tied to the approval of others. That's why you came out of the wilderness different, tougher, clearer, and untouchable in ways you weren't before. And now that proof has opened the next chapter, because heaven doesn't release promotion until it knows you won't crumble without human support. You didn't just survive the wilderness, you proved in the absence of everything that you still had everything you needed. That's why the season has ended. The wilderness wasn't punishment, it was proof, and you passed. Number 11. You've been graduated by fire, not ceremony. You've been graduated by fire, not ceremony. Life didn't hand you a neatly wrapped diploma with applause and pictures to mark the moment. Instead, it gave you scars, marks that carry a story no certificate could ever tell. Those scars are proof of survival, proof of transformation, proof that you endured the kind of tests that classrooms can't prepare you for. The world respects titles and awards, but what you carry is something far greater. Evidence that you've walked through fire and came out forged, not destroyed. Ceremonies are designed for recognition. They are for show, for others to clap and acknowledge your achievement. But fire doesn't clap. Fire doesn't congratulate. Fire tests in silence and in pain. And when it releases you, it doesn't need a crowd to validate it. The evidence is etched into who you are. Your resilience, your wisdom, your discernment, your strength, all of it is your diploma. And no one can counterfeit it because it wasn't given to you. It was earned through endurance. That's why you walk differently now. You speak with an authority that doesn't come from books or applause, but from experience. You carry a depth that others can sense, even if they can't explain it. Your presence itself tells the truth. You've been through what should have killed you, yet here you stand, stronger than ever. That is the graduation the fire gave you. The most powerful thing about being graduated by fire is that it cannot be undone. A degree on paper can be revoked, but a scar can't be erased. It travels with you, a permanent reminder of both what you survived and who you became in the process. You may not have walked out with a cap and gown, but you walked out with something priceless, the undeniable mark of someone who has been tested, proven, and elevated. You've been graduated by fire, not ceremony, and the world has no choice but to respect it. Number 12. The enemy's last weapon was delay, and it failed. The enemy's last weapon was delay, and it failed. Every other attempt to break you, betrayal, loss, disappointment, rejection, only made you stronger. So the final strategy was time itself. If they could not crush you with direct blows, they thought they could wear you down with waiting. Delay was supposed to make you give up on yourself, lose faith in God, and abandon the vision planted inside you. The logic was simple. Wear you out long enough and your hope would collapse. But it didn't. You're still here. That's why the weapon failed. Delay is cruel because it doesn't scream, it whispers. It makes you wonder if the promise was real. It convinces you that maybe you misheard, maybe you're not chosen, maybe it will never happen. Delay feeds doubt by stretching silence. But the fact that you survived that silence without surrendering means delay has no more power over you. The strongest hand was played, and it couldn't win. Now, everything shifts. Because once time itself fails to kill your faith, nothing else can. If you didn't walk away when it seemed like nothing was moving, you won't walk away when things accelerate. The enemy counted on fatigue to destroy you, but instead the waiting seasoned you. You became wiser. You learned patience, discernment, and endurance. You learned how to believe without evidence, how to stand when nothing supported you, how to walk by faith when sight was absent. That's why the delay was not wasted. It backfired. And now that the expiration date has arrived, what was held back is being released. Delay was their final card, their strongest weapon, and it didn't work. That means the battle is permanently over. The waiting season has closed, and since time itself could not kill your faith, no other weapon ever will. You've already proven unbreakable. Number 13. You don't have to defend what's already been sealed. You don't have to defend what's already been sealed. When heaven declares something over your life, it's not open for debate, negotiation, or revision. The stamp of finished is final, and no amount of noise, opposition, or accusation can overturn it. That's the mistake people make. They think their gossip, slander, or resistance has the power to delay or cancel what's already sealed. But the truth is, they're arguing against a verdict that has already been written in permanent ink. This is why you no longer need to exhaust yourself trying to explain, justify, or prove anything to anyone. You don't have to fight for validation when the outcome has already been decided. Heaven signed off on your breakthrough before your enemies even got the memo. That seal is divine authorization. It means no earthly rejection, no demonic opposition, no personal flaw, and no past failure has the authority to override it. Once the seal is placed, the matter is closed. Think of how much energy you've wasted defending yourself against lies, trying to clear your name, or making people see what you were carrying. None of it was necessary, because what's sealed doesn't need defending. You were trying to protect something that was already untouchable. The stamp of finished is stronger than their words, stronger than their disbelief, and stronger than their attempts to block you. The beauty of this truth is freedom. Freedom to stop fighting unnecessary battles. Freedom to walk in confidence, not explanation. Freedom to move forward without looking back to see who approves. Because when heaven seals something, it's not just protection, it's guarantee. That seal means it's irreversible, non-negotiable, and unstoppable. You don't need to prove it, defend it, or explain it. You only need to walk in it. When heaven stamps finished over your life, hell doesn't get to appeal the verdict. Number 14. This is not relief. This is authority. This is not relief. This is authority. Relief is what you feel when a weight is lifted, when the struggle finally ends, when the pressure eases off. Authority, however, is much greater. Authority means you don't just walk away from the battle. You walk out owning the ground where it once tried to destroy you. You're not simply free from what happened. You've been elevated to a position of power over it. What once made you tremble must now bow when it hears your name. That's the real transformation of your suffering. It didn't just let you escape. It equipped you with a strength that now governs the very thing that once governed you. The heartbreak that used to paralyze you, it can't touch you anymore. You now have the authority to help others heal from theirs. The rejection that once crushed you, it no longer defines you. You now carry the authority to break its hold on others. The trauma that nearly buried you, it no longer owns you. You now walk with the authority to declare freedom for those still trapped in it. Authority is different from survival. Survivors carry the story. The authoritative carry the mantle. When you survive, you testify. When you hold authority, you legislate. You now dictate the atmosphere around the very areas that once dictated to you. That's why doors will open for you that wouldn't before, why people will be drawn to your voice, why even your presence unsettles what used to feel untouchable. You're not just someone who made it out. You're someone who now rules the ground where the fire once burned. And here's the part most don't understand. Authority can't be faked or bought. It's only granted to those who have paid the price in the hidden place, who have endured the crushing and still stood. That's why you carry it now. What once broke you has been placed under your feet. This isn't just relief from pain, it's authority over it, and that authority is permanent. You've walked through storms that seemed endless, faced battles that felt unbeatable, and endured seasons that tested every fiber of your being. And yet here you are, transformed, elevated, and unshakable. Every struggle, every delay, every betrayal was never meant to break you. It was meant to forge you into someone who could carry power, wisdom, and authority that the world cannot counterfeit. What once controlled you has been nullified. What once terrified you now bows to your presence. The cycles have ended, the cages have been outgrown, and the contracts of suffering have expired. You don't just walk free, you command the ground you once stumbled on. This is your season of release, not just from pain, but into power. You've been graduated by fire, tempered by time, and proven in the wilderness. Heaven has stamped finished over your life, and no opposition, no delay, and no old enemy can appeal that verdict. What remains is authority, the kind that shifts atmospheres, breaks generational patterns, and empowers you to move boldly into what was always meant for you. The past has no hold, and the future has no limits. You are not merely a survivor, you are a chosen one, elevated beyond the storms that once defined you. Every scar, every lesson, every moment of endurance is a crown you wear invisibly but powerfully. You've been shaped, sealed, and set apart. The world may not fully understand it, and that's fine. It's not for their recognition. It's for your destiny. Stand in it, walk in it, breathe it. Your battles are over, your lessons have been learned, and your authority is absolute. This is not just the end of a season. It is the beginning of a life lived unshakably, unbreakably, and unapologetically. You are free, you are powerful, and you are unstoppable. If this message hit you deep and stirred something inside, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel now and join a community of warriors who refuse to be broken. Hit that like button to honor the journey you've survived and the authority you now carry. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their season of fire is over. Drop a comment and let us know how you're stepping into your power, because your story matters and your victory inspires others. Every click, every share, every word builds momentum. So don't just watch. Take your place in this movement and let the world feel the force of a life fully unleashed. Stay awakened. Chosen ones.